Are you ready to deploy your first batch of servers with Terraform? As we continue to take the terror out of Terraform, in the second video, we set up our Terraform environment in AWS on a Linux machine. And if you haven't watched that video yet, I recommend that you check it out. You can find that link above. Today we make it rain machines. I will also provide all of the links in the description as normal. Also stick around so you know what next week's video will be on Wednesday, as this is the theme of the month. Let's get started. Hey VFC fam, it's your boy Joshua Tech Dev Walker, your Venti Fried Chicken author and global cloud slinger. This channel is dedicated to cloud computing and technology, so if you're interested in cloud or tech, subscribe now. Alright, let's get into this terminal. So same disclaimer as last time. I already have my virtual private cloud created in AWS. I have also launched the EC2 into a public subnet within that VPC. And once again, if you're a security person, don't freak out. I am only showing this IP address and not blocking out because I am using a sandbox that will be destroyed once this video is done. It's also locked down to my local address for its temporary stay. So coming off the last video, I'm just going to check to make sure that everything is still installed as expected. As I did this on a brand new environment, as I just told you, I destroyed the last environment as soon as that video was over. So we'll just do terraform-help and voila, looks like we're good to go. Clear my screen. And I should have mentioned this last video just as some help. If you're on the Mac, it's just Command K instead of you writing clear every time. So let's get this mother started. We'll start off by making our directory. Then we're gonna CD into that directory or jump into that directory. So if we list this directory, there's nothing in there so far, of course, which is what we're about to do next. So I'm gonna use my beautiful friend Vim, and we're gonna create our main.tf file, which will be where our configuration lies for this demo. And I don't really want to bore you with typing, so I'm gonna copy and paste snippets, and then I'm gonna explain what those snippets mean, and we're just gonna layer them on. So we'll start by talking about the provider. So a good way to look at it is the provider is basically the vendor that you're going to be utilizing. So in our case, we're going to be using Amazon Web Services. Actually, let me zoom in a little bit so you guys aren't looking at ant-sized code. Hopefully this is a lot better. So once again, the provider is basically the vendor you're going to be targeting. So I'm saying, hey, I want to use resources within AWS. And if you decipher for yourself, you can see that I'm pointing out what region I want this in. This is US East 1, so this is in Virginia, or Virginia, depending on where you're from. And that was a terrible Virginia accent, and that's not making fun of you guys. I'm actually in Florida, so no room for me to talk about anyone. So that's just setting us up for success. If you've done any coding, then you know we're starting from top to bottom. So we're saying, hey, we want to use AWS. We want it to be in this geographic location. Now that we know we're in AWS and want it in a certain geographic location, we're saying we want to use a resource in AWS. And in this particular case, we're saying we want to use Amazon EC2. So we're targeting AWS instance. AWS instance is a resource name provided by AWS so that we can target that resource. So if I was targeting another service, it would be a different name. And if you see this web app here, this is actually an arbitrary name and it's local to this block of code, meaning I can use it to target certain resources within this block, which will make a lot more sense later in the course, but still emphasizing the locality of it. It's local like a SoundCloud wrapper, meaning it only really means anything within this block or on this block if you're talking about the SoundCloud wrapper analogy. You can think of it as like a target name, so you're using it to target a certain resource. So you'll see later in the course when we use like dot notation where we would say, AWS instance dot web app, so that we're saying, we're looking to target this specific EC2 to do something. So to layer on, we're adding in our AMI ID. So we're just saying we want to instantiate an AWS instance. We want it to be named, web app, or this is how we're going to target. It's going to be called web app. And the type of machine we want is based on this AMI ID. If you're familiar with AMIs, it's basically a configuration snapshot. So we're saying we want this certain type of server with this certain type of software on it. And this is the ID for you to grab that configuration and deploy based on this template. Next, we're adding the subnet ID. So we're saying we want this to be deployed in this specific subnet. So this is the public subnet that I talked about earlier so that we can reach it from the internet. So the subnet ID is basically the address of where we need to park that VM. Next is instance type. So we're trying to stay in the free tier. So I'm saying I want to deploy a T3 micro, which is within the free tier, so we don't pay for anything. So we're just saying, you know, the size of the instance. But if this was like, say we're deploying a Tableau server or something like that, the vendor would give you a recommendation on what size you should deploy that software as. Next, we're going to add the count. So where the AMI that we're targeting, which I should have said earlier, is a Linux AMI. So we're going to be deploying 2, but if this was a, you know, enterprise run or something like that, we might be deploying way more, depending on the use case and architecture. Lastly, we're going to be good citizens, and we're going to add tags. Tags are super important. It's how we, you know, target certain machines. It's how you hook to your performance monitoring. So tags are a very important paradigm. Usually, if you're joining a company or something like that, they have a pretty strong tagging schema, or at least some type of tagging schema. So here, you know, just to kind of simulate what it would look like maybe in the real world, name, of course I'm still making fun of stuff, but at least saying that's a Linux AMI, and then saying this belongs to, you know, the fictitious application team. And with that, we're ready to deploy these Linux machines. With that, I'll be saving my configuration. In Vim, that's WQ, so write and quit. And as you can see, that was written there. Then Command K to clear. And then from here, we are going to use one of the commands that we talked about in that first video, which is Terraform plan, to make sure what we're trying to deploy, 1, is valid code, and 2, isn't going to blow anything up. So we're going to run that. And as you can see, we're going to have 2 changes. So these are going to be net new resources, and looks like everything is ready to go. Oh, and I realized I skipped a step. So something I did initially that I shouldn't have done, no pun intended, was I did Terraform init, because you have to get basically the repo ready. So if we were going back in time, I would have hit Terraform init, and it would have initialized everything. So you would see the success message of everything was installed correctly, and then you know you're cooking with grease. So now let's deploy this infrastructure, or at least try. And we'll see, dun dun dun, boom, we have launched. Oh, actually not quite. Anytime you launch new resources, you're gonna get this value just to reconfirm, just in case you fat fingered deployment. So I'm gonna hit yes just to confirm. And ooh, look at them bad boys go. Oh, and it looks like these resources are deployed. Let's go check, because we have trust issues like Drake. So if we go into the EC2 console, we see that those machines actually deployed properly, which is a great thing and exactly what we wanted to happen. And in subsequent videos, we're going to take it up a notch. But I know you guys might be deploying from like your own, you know, local AWS account versus the sandbox that I'm using, because I'm kind of cheating here, where, you know, the consumption is not on me. So I want to make sure you destroy these resources before we get out of here. Cleared my screen. And then of course, we're going to use the other command that we mentioned in that first video, which is Terraform destroy. Use this bad boy with caution, because there are no takebacks. You don't want to Terraform destroy your career. And what Terraform destroy is doing is it's looking at that state file and saying anything that's in here, unless you explicitly called something out, everything is going to get destroyed based on that ledger. So there are some commands that we're going to talk about in subsequent videos where you can target certain resources, which is probably the thing that happens the most versus like nuking everything. But just wanted to make sure you got rid of those resources. You don't want to forget about your free tier resources and one day wake up with a bill. So hopefully this is helpful. And as you can see, they're so thoughtful. They know, especially with destroy, that like, hey, are you sure you want to destroy? There's no takebacks. And I'm going to say yes. And you'll see we're destroying those instances. And I'm going to go into the EC2 console, and I'm just going to make sure those things are gone. Still destroying. I actually like that sentence, or short phrase. That's how I feel every day, just still destroying. Yeah, I concur, Terraform. I concur. Destruction complete after 30 seconds. These are just great comments. And then honestly, even though it's taking some time to destroy them because it's cycling through the machines, if we look into the console itself and we refresh, you see that these machines are being terminated. So we did our job there. So hopefully you got a lot out of this video. This is going to be a super fun series, because I think you're going to see just the straight power of Terraform, and we're going to take all the Terra out of Terraform. Let me know in the comments what you're excited to learn about Terraform, or if you have any other, concerns or comments or any questions about what you've seen or anything that's not so clear. And if you made it this far in my chaos, then you should definitely subscribe if you haven't. Also share the series with a friend. That would be super helpful for the channel. And as always, train, inspire, relate, cloud.